Welcome to Hey Sister. This is episode 38, Textiquette.
Hey sister.
Hey sister.
Join me, Courtney Lewis,
And me, Carly Ferguson,
in our conversational podcast about everyday situations.
You can count on us to tell it to you straight with our own sisterly spin.
Consider this a phone call with your own Southern sisters as we discuss with you personal accountability, healthy relationships, managing responsibilities, and contributing to society.
Each episode will consist of straight talk and a call to action.
Your sisters are calling.
Thanks for answering. Welcome back to another episode of Hey Sister. This is Carly, and you're joining us during our Summer Hot Topics series. Every week for the summer, Courtney and I are having bold and short conversations about topics we feel passionately about. So far, we've talked about everything from staying optimistic in the face of play place closures in episode 33, Fun Mom Summer, to being bold, honest, and kind in our comments on Facebook in episode 37, Freedom to Comment last week.
If you're new to our community, we welcome you to the Hey Sisterhood. I'm Courtney, the oldest sister in our family, and Carly and I love having this podcast to expand our family because we really do believe that we're all children of God. And in particular, we believe that women need women. We're all sisters. And let's be honest, everyone needs a good old sisterly phone call with a kindly nudge to try and be better and work harder some weeks. Or maybe you need some encouragement to cut yourself some slack other weeks. So we're here for you. Speaking of a sisterhood, we would love for y'all to connect with us on social media too. We're at the Hey Sister podcast on Instagram. And if you join us there, you'll get to meet our youngest sister, Cassidy, who is known as our Happy Pants Dancer. She uploads a Happy Pants dance to a fun song just about every Friday. And we hear from many people it's their favorite part of the week. Some of those people who say it's their favorite part of the week are my children, but we have heard from many people they love Cassidy's Happy Pants dances.
In case you were wondering, Courtney and I will be bringing guest experts back. This summer, we wanted to change things up a little bit, but starting in August, y'all are in for a real treat. We're launching a back to school series. We'll dive into subjects we studied during our school years, but as they apply to womanhood. We're really excited and know you'll love it too. So stay tuned for the syllabus. That sounds fun.
I know, syllabus. You can pick which classes to enroll in.
Syllabus.
Syllabus.
Yeah.
It will be a little silly. I don't want to keep that silly bus part.
Why? I was not a school kid. I would be like, the syllabus? No, thank you. But no, it is fun.
Okay, fine. Well, don't get too ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about today's topic. Carly, why don't you introduce it?
Sure thing. I sure love to take two words and make them into one. So today's episode combines texting and etiquette to form Textiquette. Ha ha.
I love it so much.
We have gathered our personal opinions. Didn't need much gathering there, I guess, but opinions from various generations of people that we know in order to give y'all a summation of some etiquette to follow when texting. Isn't your interest a little piqued by that?
Well, I love talking about this because I think it's something we all do multiple times a day, whether it's a personal text message to somebody or a group text message. And I always wonder how my texts come off. I've wondered before I send a text message and before I have a chance to proofread my text message, it auto changes the word. And I think to myself, okay, I need to correct that word and send it with an asterisk and let them know that I didn't mean to say the wrong word. And then I think, is that bad form for me to like blow up their phones with continued corrections when I realize I misspelled 3 words? So here's asterisk 1, 2, and 3 of mistakes I made. And then I just want
you just know I love those moments when you do that. Because you know that something's coming where I make a GIF to tease you because I know that bothers you when something comes off wrong and it's like even grammatically incorrect. You're like, ooh, let me fix that. I think it's with texting, you find the styles of different people and you learn a lot about who they are and what matters to them. Like I will text as it's coming through my brain. And it is very disheveled and it's just not as concise as Courtney texts, which I appreciate. But also that depends on who I'm texting, because if I don't know a person very well, I definitely don't want to give off the wrong impression, like I didn't go to school. So I try my best.
No capitals, no punctuation.
I try to sound articulate, or I forget to text back because I feel like I need more time. We'll get into that.
Let's actually start with private texts and then move into group texts, maybe.
Oh, that's a good way. Mm-hmm.
If you're doing a private text, I mean, we just talked about, it doesn't bother you if somebody corrects something that they said wrong, right? That doesn't bother you. If you look at your phone and you're like 4 new texts, they sent 1 text and 3 corrections to their words they used. That doesn't bother you?
Oh, no, not at all. And
No?
I think that started from actually when I was dating my husband. He would text individual thoughts. And at the time, I thought that was so interesting because I would send paragraphs and he would just, as he was thinking about it. And so then I had to learn to be like fast in my responses back to him. And then we just both started doing it. And I realized once you open the message, even if there were 4 messages, all those notifications are gone because you've read all 4 messages. So it doesn't really muddy up your conversations.
Do you care about read reports? I know some phones allow you to make your settings so that people will see if there's a read report versus delivered versus what's the other one? Oh, notifications turned off. I noticed recently in texting you, it's like Carly has notifications turned off.
I didn't know I did that. So that was news to me when I had people being like, I saw that you had your notifications turned off. I'm like, well, I guess that's going on. I think I put it on nighttime mode because I was trying to be better about going to sleep earlier. And so I put like a bedtime reminder for myself. And so it automatically did that
all day,
11 o'clock at night. And then I set it to like 8 a.m. I just know for like weeks there was a time where I was texting you. I'm like, it says Carly has notifications muted or silenced. Yeah, I guess I'll never know if she read my message, but I noticed today it was turned back on. So I get read reports if you read my messages now, but for a while there, it was showing me Carly has notifications turned off. I did not do that intentionally because I don't care about read reports.
I like read reports for you. I'm like, I need to know Carly saw it. So I'm like, good, it's a read report. Like Carly has notifications turned off. I'm like, I'll never know if she saw this message.
It does hold me accountable because I know if you've seen that I've read it, then you'll be expecting something soon after that. And so I do appreciate read reports. I don't care if other people have them on. That doesn't bother me, but I am definitely more lax on those kinds of things. If somebody doesn't respond to me, I don't really care if it's within a time frame. I'm much more relaxed about texting. Like you said, multiple times a day, I'm like, yeah, if I can get away with that, I'd be like, none. It'd be great.
Well, how do you feel about reactions to people's texts?
Oh, you know my thoughts on that. I love reactions. If I could just react to people, I love it. Sorry. And we're speaking right now towards iPhones, but I think we spoke to some of our family members who were very annoyed by reactions, but only in the case that they're in a group chat. We can get to that, or should we go ahead?
Is there anything else about personal texts that are irritating when we say etiquette? What about personal text? We've talked a little bit about timeline. So Carly, like I said, this is just our opinions on the matter. But I will say Carly is a little bit more flexible with when she expects responses from people. I do tend to expect responses sooner, but I do think in the life of a mom, you're not going to have time to respond. Sometimes I'll see a message and then forget it's there. So I think we can all cut each other some slack there. I think I used to be a little bit more high, more uppity. What's it called? Not tight-winded.
Brown tight? Do you want to call yourself this?
Uptight. Uptight was the word I was looking for. Uptight. Okay. All right. Well, before we get into group chats, let's just see if there's anything else that we want to say about texting privately. One thing that you touched on is timely responses. I will say that matters to me if I do need a quick answer. But generally, I just operate by the fact that if I haven't heard back from somebody and I needed a quick answer, I'm going to go with they're going to say no. Like if I ever text somebody and say, hey, I'm at a thrift store and I just found this, and then I don't hear back from them, I'm going to assume they don't want it. I'm not going to go ahead and buy it and hope it's a yes. Mm-hmm. And I don't get frustrated by that. But there have been times when I did need a quick answer, or somebody needed a quick answer from me. And then I feel bad when I'm like, oh, I didn't see it in time. But we all understand. I do think that's where iWatches, if you have an iPhone, come in handy, because you're like, I saw it when I needed to. And I love that you can send a reaction or a response from the iWatch. Like, yep, nope, perfect. But it's funny because even when I send a short reaction or a short message back, I think they're going to think I'm so rude. They just asked me this really detailed question about if it's okay if they could pick up my child for a play date tomorrow. And I'm thinking, oh, that's so kind of them to offer to pick up my kid. And then I just say yes, because I'm able to send a response right at that moment. And I think that sounds so rude. I need to remember to go back later when my hands aren't in the middle of, shredding chicken breasts. I need to remember to go back and send a nice response instead of just quickly with the tip of my nose, holding it up to my watch and pressing yes. So anyway, I think that we've all learned to be considerate and compassionate and extend a little bit of leeway if somebody doesn't respond immediately. But I would say if you ever need somebody's immediate response on something, either call them or just assume it's a no.
Right. And I think you touched on some really good points, because with texting, it's the time frame, it's the reading between the lines, that connotation, because like getting a yup response from someone, you might opt in that moment to be quick and send something back immediately in favor of giving a more lengthy response that's more true to how you would in person. So we have to always give people the benefit of the doubt that the situation that they're in might be not as easy for them to craft a message that is really true to how they're feeling. I know I get caught up in that, where I want to favor sharing something in a way that is true to myself, so much so that I forget to respond. And I think because of that, then later I'm like coming back, I'm so sorry, I was thinking about this. And I'm guilty as one of those people at times. And I think we all are. And so giving each other, like you said, that leeway is really important, because no matter what, it might come across a little differently than you would say it in person. So just remembering that, because that was one of the things that we heard back from people was, how are you asking a question? How are you trying to get information from someone? Are you being pointed and saying you are doing this? So try to remember that. Try to be as kind as you can and think about how it's going to be read, but also as the reader, realizing that they might be in a situation, like you said, shredding chicken breast, and it's not time to mince a lot of words.
All you can do is use the tip of your nose. I will say, Carly convinced me to switch over to the iPhone, and it's been weeks. Okay, it's been half a year.
And I'm like, wait.
I finally have decided that I like my iPhone. So bravo, good job, Apple. You've won me. The fact that I can send text messages from my watch with the tip of my nose, I feel like Bewitched. You know how she does her little nose twitch? Like I can move my nose and send a text message from my watch. So it works. But I do want to say, speaking of these people that we polled to ask about text messages, we were with family last week and we asked some of our family members, they were some of the people that we were talking to, about their preferences for text messages. And one of the things that our brother said that I thought was interesting, that he finds obnoxious with texting, is when somebody reaches out to him to say, hey, and then as soon as he responds with another, hey, how's it going? Or some little chat, then they follow up with, here's what I need from you.
Bait and switch.
Bait and switch, exactly. And so Dallas was like, that is one of my biggest pet peeves. I find that to be poor etiquette on texting. When you text somebody only to get them to respond so that you can then say, now that I've got your attention, here's what I need from you.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't like that. And I liked that our mom did bring up, when you're texting somebody, be careful not to say, you need to do this, I need you for this, and to be more kind in how you word things. So kind of like what you're saying, being authentic to how you would actually talk to somebody. And I think I fall into that trap sometimes. I can get into the business as usual, here's the bullet points, just because I see texting as such an efficient means of communication. And I know that I'm long-winded. So I sometimes try to do bullet points to keep things brief, but sometimes I need to be wary of the fact that it might come off as pretty aggressive when I'm like checklist of all the things that need to be done or the schedule that needs to be made. But those are some of the things from private texting. I will say one thing that drives me crazy, and this will be our bridge into group messages, because I've seen it in group messages and I've seen it in personal messages. But one thing that drives me nuts in any sort of text, whether it's a private or a group, are the use of ellipses. ... I go bananas if somebody uses ... with me, because when I see ... my thought is, I'm thinking more. I feel like whoever sends me a text message that uses a ... to bridge the gap between one sentence and the next, I feel like they're basically telling me there's something else I'm thinking, but I'm not going to text it. And maybe that's me being slightly psychotic to imagine that there's some ulterior motive or some private thought that they don't want to share with me. But there's that narcissistic part of me. It's like, what are they trying to say? What do they want me to think that those 3 dots are saying?
Well, I don't think that's quite narcissistic, but I think for those listening, it either struck a nerve or like made them think, oh my gosh, so true. or they are so confused at why ellipses would matter so much. But I agree. I think it's because we were raised, like if you were watching something, it was this ominous ...
To be continued.
And like ellipses literally, what did you say?
Do you remember the episodes? Because when we were kids, there wasn't DVR. An episode of Full House would end and it'd be like, to be continued, ... You're like, I have to wait till next Friday to know how this ends.
Maybe it's a trigger because of that. Oh my goodness. It's Full House did it to us, y'all.
It's coming full circle. We realize now.
Full circle. That's what it should be called. It's that feeling like words are intentionally being left out and you need to insinuate. And I think pulling from a quote that I like to say often from Brené Brown is the story that I'm telling myself, because sometimes we get in the habit of telling ourselves a story that is maybe a little more dramatic, or maybe we're insinuating because from what we're reading, it seems like they're alluding to something that is negative, but we're now left in that position to insinuate because there's ... It doesn't give us anything. So just leave them out. It's not necessary because you're texting, you're saying what you're saying, and you don't need to say that you're not saying anything. And it'd be like if you were talking to somebody in person and saying, well, ... And you'd be like, what do you mean? ...
Well, especially because mom raised us with the phrase, finish the thought. And I feel like that's the opposite of ... If somebody sends me a ... I'm going to finish the thought and I'm going to try and connect the dots and figure out what they're saying.
Yeah. Connect the ... dots.
Exactly. And so I do need to realize, like you said, is it Brené Brown? Is that what you're saying her name is?
Yeah.
I need to apply that, the story I'm telling myself, because that does help me calm down so that I don't overreact when I get a ... So I don't start twitching. My head doesn't start spinning around in circles. I need to calm myself down, realize they're not trying to offend me. But that is one of those, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I've never considered that before, just be aware that that ... might be triggering for people like us that watched Full House and hated that week of waiting.
It just comes across like if I'm using a ... which I hardly ever do because I know how it feels to be on the other side of it. I know this sounds really crazy saying it like this, and
first world problems.
Maybe we're like alone in this, Courtney, you and I, but we have heard from other people that it does also bother them. So it's worth saying once, having those ... in there, the ellipses, the real term, it's really meant to allude to something, and you're giving someone an empty plate and they're meant to understand what's supposed to be there in between the two. So connect the dots. Don't leave those in there. Just leave them out. Let the words be what they are and stand as they are. But there's really no need in texting. And I think that comes from a disconnect of what a text serves as. So like you said, it's very efficient. It's a way to get information out. It is not a letter. It is not an email. It serves a completely different purpose than those. It's supposed to be as concise as possible and direct, but also most of the time it's jovial. It's just meant to be more approachable. And so having ... in there doesn't feel as approachable as a ha 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 or LOL or these other things that have been intentionally created to make it more friendly and inviting.
Well, I think we've beat a dead horse with the ...
Sorry.
No. I'm just saying we can move on, but I agree with everything you've said. No, I'm not criticizing you. Trust me, I could talk longer about ... To be continued. So anyway, let's move on. I just want to say, I think if a ... is offensive, one thing that's not offensive to everybody we've talked to are emojis. Everybody seems to love emojis. Like you're talking about the lighthearted approach of a text message. If you use an emoji, we did some surveying and nobody does not like emojis.
Well, actually, I told you I served with some young ladies in our church and they were like, emojis are so out. But
I didn't consider them valid.
We don't even, they're not a part of this poll here.
Okay, sorry. What generation is younger than Gen Z?
Have they been named?
I don't know if they've been named yet. So
is there anything after Z?
If you're going from youngest to oldest, we talked to Gen Z, Millennial, Gen X, and baby boomers over the past couple of weeks. And everybody has said they like emojis. So if you're texting anybody in that age range, they're all cool with emojis. They're cool with GIFs too. And I've always wondered, are they GIFs or GIFs? GIF?
I think they're GIFs.
You say GIF with a soft G, with like a giraffe GIF? Not like a gift.
Yeah. And I can't remember why, but I feel like there was a definitive reason.
Okay, let's land on GIF. Okay, so no on dot, dot, dots, yes on emojis, yes on GIFs. Now let's talk a little bit about group messages. I will say I love my dear sister-in-law, Taylor, because she was the bold one who said when we were talking about group messages, what is a piece of textiquette that you would give somebody? And she's like, I hate androids. So I thought that was pretty funny. And I was glad that she was honest. And it's funny because in our group message, it's my husband, it's the Android user. We are a divided household. And it's funny because I was an Android user and loved them. But then I've converted and I keep trying to tell my husband to join the club. But it's funny because my sister-in-law is like, yeah, he makes our text reactions repeat themselves. Because if you give a reaction and there's an Android and an iPhone group message, then when you love a message, the whole message gets repeated. And in our family, that's a big deal because people are long-winded and write long text messages. So the whole message gets repeated. So it's like your whole screen length long gets repeated with so-and-so loves, and then the whole message gets typed out. So that was one thing in a group message. Do the world a favor, I guess, and everybody should get an iPhone.
No,
I'm just
it's
kidding.
not the androids themselves. It was just that people react and they don't realize. So a part of that etiquette, I think, is not reacting
in a group message,
including an android. I think when you talked about the iWatches, people who have iWatches are usually the guilty ones of reacting, not realizing that it is a group message, including an android. And so that's why it happens. And then a lot of people then start doing it, and it just muddies up the conversation because then you need to scroll up to see what was going on. And when in cases you're trying to come up with a plan or there is a flow that's happening, it totally disrupts the flow, throws off the emperor's groove.
Yes, it does. Speaking of missing things in a group message because it gets muddied up, that is one thing that is important in a group message is responding in a group message. If the question is asked of a group, we need a date for this, do respond because plans need to be made and there's a whole group clearly that's counting on it. I've been experiencing this recently with my son's soccer team because I'm trying to coordinate a team picture day. And it's so frustrating because I'm trying to coordinate this via text. Half of the parents contribute and say, yes, that date works for me. Half don't respond. We get to practice. And my husband's the coach. He's announcing to the team, okay, we're going to take team pictures next week. And then two moms are like, oh, that doesn't work for us. I'm like, you're on the group text message. Why wouldn't you have responded there? That's so frustrating to me because I have been mentally planning and preparing for that. And then to have people not respond and then act surprised. And they're like, oh, I guess I missed that. I'm like, just read the text messages. We're in a group message. It's literally only filled with practice announcements and this new thread about team picture day. It's not a lot, but that's one of my biggest pet peeves is when people don't respond to planning. That needs to be responded to.
That's one of the hard things, I think, because I don't know if that's what group texts were made for in a way, because when you're in a big message like that and you don't know people, it's hard to say, I don't know at the moment. Let me get back to you.
That's true.
You don't want to respond with an empty answer, but then out of sight, out of mind, as soon as it's been read, as soon as you've seen it, then it is a lot harder to go back to. So you get a lot of those non-responsive group chats because of it.
Or people that silence their notifications. People are like, sorry, I silenced notifications on this. You're like, then why are you here? Yeah. I get it. I've done it myself before, but then you miss out on stuff.
I like GroupMe if you've had to use that. I think in certain cases it is more friendly, especially because the Android iPhone thing, there's no differentiation or
that's true
problems there. But yeah, I think that's totally true. I will be better myself about responding on those things, on those types of questions where it's a response is necessary in order to make a plan, make a decision, because usually it's like, oh, I need to do a couple things first in order to come up with the response. And then I forget. So we need to do better, be better.
So number one piece of texting etiquette, I cannot believe we have not brought up yet, texting in a social setting.
Ooh, yeah.
That is a big one. And that has actually come up across all generations, which I thought was interesting because sometimes I feel like a particular generation is the number one abuser of this rule. And I need to not say that because I've seen it across all generations. When I'm listening to my youngest sister be like, oh, it's so sad when you go to a restaurant and you see a whole family sitting there and they're all on their phones. And I'm listening to somebody who is a Gen Z say this about a millennial or a family that includes baby boomers and their adult kids or their grandchildren. It spans all generations. And one thing that I think is helpful if you're ever going to use your phone and you're in a social situation is to excuse what's happening. So the example was given, if you're waiting on a text because your sister or your niece is in labor and having a baby, or you're waiting on some news, or you're waiting on a phone call from a repairman or something like that. If that's why you have your phone in your hand, excuse that out loud, because no, you don't need to say it. I get that. There's no need to announce what you're doing and it's really nobody else's business. But at the same time, that will make the people around you feel a lot more comfortable and like you're not itching to get out of the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you think it's appropriate to also excuse yourself away from the situation in order to send the text, do the thing? Because like if you're taking a call, you wouldn't take a call with other people around if you're talking to somebody else.
Yes and no.
Really? Okay.
I've seen, yeah. So actually it's funny you say that because I just had a play date yesterday for a friend from one of my daughter's gymnastics class. And I'd never spent time with this mother and daughter before, but the mother had to take a phone call while she was at my house and she didn't excuse it before the phone call came in, but we were both just in the kitchen. She answered the phone. I could hear what she was talking about. And then she hung up the phone and she explained the situation that she was trying to find a new sitter and trying to arrange a schedule. And I could pretty much hear that was what was going on through the phone call. But I thought it was polite of her to explain what was happening. And she didn't walk out of the room to take the phone call. She just continued having the phone call while we were in the kitchen together. Did not bother me one bit, but she explained it afterwards. And it was just nice to hear her say, we're trying to find a new sitter. And she kind of explained her predicament. It was nice to be able to have a conversation about babysitters then, because then it led to more conversations. And it's not because she left the room to say, sorry, I have to take this, which would have been fine too if she'd chosen to do that. But I actually liked it because I got to hear a short conversation. And then we were able to have a conversation from her phone conversation.
Yeah, that's good. I was just thinking about myself and my own tendencies. I feel like I get distracted very easily. And if there's a conversation going on around me, it is really hard for me to send a text because I will start writing out what people are saying. It's really hard for me to focus on those things at that time. And if I need to, I really don't want to do a bad job in the text, because if it's that important that I need to respond, then I would like to get it all out like at once as much as I can. And so maybe it is more depending on the situation and how you need to deal with it. Because if it's something like you're kind of waiting on news, like we were talking about, don't leave the group to be doing that, because that just makes other people feel like you're opting to be away and they don't know that you're not just scrolling on your phone.
Which honestly you would be if you're waiting on news, right? You're going to be waiting on news, scrolling through your phone. I do think in your case, I understand what you're saying. You don't want to be distracted while you're crafting a text. Or if you're on a phone call, you want to have it in another room just to keep it private, maybe too. But it never will fail you to announce what you're doing on your phone to other people.
Right.
Because you're in a social situation and dance with the one that brung you, right?
Yeah.
You need to be there and physically and mentally be in the conversations that you're involved in. And we've all been there where you're talking to somebody and they're looking at their phone while they're talking to you. It is so offensive, and everybody can agree on that. And yet we've all been violators of that same rule at some point in our lives.
And it helps us to know that explaining helps, because I might be guilty of that on occasion because I'm not thinking about it. I don't realize that that's what they're thinking, because sometimes I don't mind if somebody else is looking at their phone. I'm not one to want all of their attention at that time. Or I feel bad if they're rejecting phone calls as they're talking to me, because I'm like, hey, if you need to take that, please. I feel worse if you're feeling the need to forget something else because you're talking to me. But that's to each person. But the explanation really helps because it keys people in, like you were saying, into what's going on. So they don't tell themselves a different story that is basically a ... in person, right?
Right. Well, I think that should be our call to action this week, is when you're in a social setting and you pull out your phone, be cognizant of who you're talking to. And if you're looking at your phone while you're talking to somebody else, or if your phone rings while you're talking to somebody else, and explain why you're going to turn your attention to your phone, because that humanizes the person you're talking to, instead of making them feel like they're just an object that was keeping your attention until something shinier came along.
Right.
I think we all need to do a better job of that, because I really did appreciate when that mom yesterday, who I didn't know very well, explained to me. I mean, yes, it was after the phone call, but I still was appreciative that she would explain to me what had just happened, because she could have very easily just let that go and not said anything about it. But she chose to be like, we're trying to find a sitter and explain the situation. And I think when somebody explains the situation, it does make you feel bonded to them and like you're important to them.
Right.
And so I think make that our call to action this week is to excuse your behavior.
Totally. And I would like to add, because earlier you said she answered the phone and then told you. And so sometimes it's like, as you're sending a text, because you have that ability, you can say, I need to quickly respond to this. I'm sorry. Or like saying something, having kind of a script ready for yourself to say out loud. And I think not just for people that we come in contact with as adults, but definitely for our kids, we should be more aware of that, because I find myself tuning out because I need to send a text and not even caring. And it's really sad, but I'm going to be honest here. The other day I was looking at sending something and Zink comes up and he goes, wake up, because he's 2.
Aww.
And he doesn't know how to say anything. And I thought, I'm awake. So I was like, okay, just kind of shocked me out of it that was the closest thing he could come to. That's just a real moment. And we can all strive to be better and be accountable to ourselves, because texting is not real conversation. The conversations happen around us. So letting that stay within the phone and keeping those relationships number one priority. That's great.
I love that. And I'm sorry that happened with your son telling you to wake up, but I think that is a good reminder. I feel like every mom's had something similar happen at some point. So don't feel too bad. Don't beat yourself up too much, because phones are also what we use for so many things, not just communication, but for scripture study, for creating ideas and Pinterest boards and
grocery shopping.
Yeah, grocery shopping. Exactly. So I like what you're saying is not even just sending a text, but just phone etiquette in general too would be to tell your kids what you're doing on your phone. And I know I've seen you do that before. So I know I've had to do that with my kids, where I'll say, Mom's reading her scriptures right now. And I say out loud what I'm doing. And it's good too, because then my kids have held me accountable. Like I'll say, right now I just have to send a text message to so-and-so's mommy to see if they can come over for the play date. And then they'll come over and say, what did her mom say? And I'm like, oh, I didn't send the text yet. That's right. I was going to do that. Okay. So that's our call to action this week, sisters. When you're in a social setting, explain why you're using your phone when you're in a social situation. It's going to help you create better relationships with those you're with, whether they're friends or strangers or family members, any combination of those people. It's going to create better friendships and relationships. We invite y'all to follow us and connect with us on Instagram and on Facebook. We're at the Hey Sister Podcast, and we'd love to hear from y'all and hear how this call to action is going this week. So keep an eye out for our roll call post, where we check in with y'all every week to see how you're doing on the call to action. And Carly and I try to give our reports on how we're doing with the call to action as well. So stay tuned to see how we're doing with that this week. We're so glad y'all have joined us, and we hope y'all are having a wonderful summer. Stay tuned for next week's fun episode, where we're going to
talk about the things that we thought we wouldn't like, but we actually love.
Thank you for filling in the blank. I was like, I know this. This is really important to me. Yes. So join us next week. We're going to have a fun conversation about things that we love that we never knew we would like. So to be continued. ... Bye, sisters. Have a great week.
We've talked about everything from staying optimistic in the face of place closures throughout the summer.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh at you.
This is the longest explanation of place closure. Okay,
You can do it.
I can do this, guys.
Take 6. Go.
Take 6.